Catherine Gowing, an experienced veterinarian from Ireland, for whom the profession was not just a job, but a true calling. At the time of these events, she was 37 years old, a period of professional ability and personal maturity. Her life was closely connected with nature, travel, and caring for animals. The woman lived in the picturesque outskirts of Wales in the United Kingdom, where she jointly rented a spacious house with her friend Jane Doyle. An unexpected and tragic event, which will be discussed further, deeply shook the local community. The town of Moult, located in the north of Wales, had about 10,000 inhabitants. It was a typical British settlement with developed infrastructure, cozy restaurants, traditional pubs, a lively market, and various shops. It was here that Catherine Gowing settled, a representative of a famous Irish farming family, born in 1975. Catherine's parents, although they had stepped back from active farming, continued to support the rural way of life. Her father had once left direct farming activities, while her mother worked as a teacher. Children in this family were involved in agricultural work from an early age, which cultivated diligence and respect for the land. Summer vacations turned into a real school of life, where each family member had their own responsibilities. Her love for animals and nature manifested extremely early. The family farm became her first professional laboratory, where she learned the skills of communicating with her smaller brothers. The dream of becoming a veterinarian matured gradually, but consistently and purposefully. Catherine's educational path was distinguished by remarkable determination. Studying at St. Brennan School, and then at the public college in Bury, demonstrated her extraordinary abilities. Among students, she stood out not only with excellent grades but also with the depth of scientific thinking. A notable moment was during final exams, when she ranked third in the country for natural sciences. The talented student received a unique opportunity to continue her studies at Budapest University, which became a true breakthrough in her professional development. It was within the walls of this institution that fate brought her together with Jane Dow, a compatriot who would later become her closest friend and colleague. Catherine and Jane's student life was filled with bright moments, joint learning, leisure, student parties, and genuine friendship. Their kinship manifested not only in their common origin but also in professional interests. Both entirely dedicated themselves to veterinary medicine. After graduating from the university, fate led Jane to a veterinary clinic in Moult, where she quickly adapted and soon proposed a position to her friend. Catherine was received extremely warmly. Her professionalism, communication skills, and love for animals immediately won over her colleagues. Catherine's professional portrait was distinguished by a unique ability to find common ground with the most challenging patients. Her hands healed, and her gaze calmed the most frightened creatures. In the veterinary community, she was considered not just a doctor, but a true healer. Catherine's professional abilities extended far beyond purely medical skills. Her natural talent as a psychologist allowed her to easily establish contact not only with animals but also with their owners. Her unique approach to communication and deep understanding of patients' emotional states made her exceptionally popular among the city's residents. Financial circumstances forced the girls to seek more economical housing. The clinic provided temporary accommodation, but it did not satisfy the friends. Soon they found a compromise solution. They rented a shared house in the village of De Brayton, located just a 5-minute drive from their workplace. The year 2012 was a period of flourishing for Catherine. She turned 37 years old, with 2 years of successful work at the veterinary clinic and an impeccable reputation behind her. Her appearance was attractive, a soft Irish accent, a charming smile, and natural grace. Despite numerous proposals, Catherine consciously postponed starting a family, completely dedicating herself to her profession. Her friend Jane was in a serious relationship and was planning a trip to Ireland. The purpose of the visit was not only to see her relatives but also to seriously discuss a possible relocation. Jane's elderly parents needed support and care, so she was considering the option of returning to her homeland. Catherine, as always, showed maximum support and agreed to cover for her friend at work. The relationship between the girls was based on deep trust and mutual assistance. She could not even imagine that this ordinary service would turn into a true tragedy. Friday, October 12, 2012, began for Catherine like a typical workday. At 8 p.m., she finished her shift and immediately went to the local grocery store. Video surveillance cameras recorded her at 8:06 p.m. at the entrance. Her appearance was clearly documented: blue jeans, a brown zipper jacket, and a bright brown shoulder bag. For about 30 minutes, she moved through the store aisles, after which she was captured by the camera again, this time at the exit. In her hands, Catherine held an Asda supermarket bag and a pizza box. This moment turned out to be the last recorded instance of her alive. Since Catherine lived alone, her disappearance did not immediately attract attention. The meeting scheduled for the upcoming Sunday with a colleague for a shared lunch did not take place. Catherine did not make any contact, ignoring phone calls. Her colleague, well acquainted with her character, felt serious concern but initially assumed that perhaps the girl was simply ill. The critical situation was fully revealed when Jane returned from Ireland on Sunday evening. The friend discovered many strange circumstances: unlocked front doors, the absence of Catherine's car, and a complete lack of her personal belongings. Particularly alarming was the excessive smell of cleaning products in the premises. No keys, handbag, wallet, or mobile phone were found. Jane, exhausted from her long journey, initially did not pay much attention to Catherine's absence. She assumed that her friend had unexpectedly decided to visit relatives and would return soon. Tired from the trip, the woman decided to rest, planning to clarify all the details the next day. The morning brought increasing concern. Examining the house, Jane found no signs of Catherine's return. Phone calls and messages remained unanswered. Hoping to find her friend at work, she went to the veterinary clinic. The clinic administration showed considerable anxiety. It was known that Catherine had not been in contact since Friday. Sporadic and fragmented text messages received by several employees seemed extremely suspicious and uncharacteristic of the missing woman. After brief discussions, they decided to contact law enforcement. Jane spent the entire day in futile attempts to contact her friend. Immediately after work, she went to the police station, where she detailed the last known events. Her testimony immediately removed any suspicions about her. Particular attention was paid to Catherine's missing car, which could be the key to solving the case. The investigation began immediately. Police interviewed friends and acquaintances of the missing woman. Everyone unanimously noted her extraordinary responsibility and the impossibility of disappearing without warning. This only intensified concerns about her fate. Video recordings from surveillance cameras helped trace Catherine's route from the clinic to the store. However, after leaving the parking lot, her trail disappeared. No additional information was recorded. Catherine's parents in Ireland were immediately informed about their daughter's disappearance. They assured that they had not seen or spoken to her in recent days. Her sister and brother-in-law urgently arrived in Wales to join the search. Through mass media, the family appealed to the public to provide any information about the missing woman. However, by October 16, no useful testimony had been received. Investigators increasingly leaned towards the version of a violent crime, as Catherine had not made contact. The crime scene investigation revealed a number of strange circumstances. Despite the absence of blood traces, forensic experts found fresh male DNA samples on the bedding in a piece of fabric tied to the bed frame. There was speculation about the presence of an unknown man in the house at the moment of disappearance. Jane categorically denied the existence of any romantic relationships for Catherine at that time. They were such close friends that no intimate story could have escaped her attention. Moreover, Catherine's character would not have allowed her to enter into intimate relations with a random man. The version of a violent intrusion was gaining more and more weight. This was evidenced by the unlocked front doors and traces of an unknown person in the house. Forensic experts carefully collected all available DNA samples for further laboratory research. On the evening of October 14, during Jane's futile attempts to reach her friend, 46-year-old Clive Sharp, her ex-boyfriend, with whom they had a serious argument before her departure, unexpectedly responded. Clive Sharp tried to attract Jane's attention by demonstrating a new car and an unexpected gift. However, the woman was too worried about her friend's disappearance to pay him any attention. Their relationship had lasted several months and began through a dating app. The 46-year-old sales consultant lived approximately 150 kilometers from the friend's house but frequently visited Jane. Despite a formal acquaintance with Catherine, Clive often visited their house. There was a hidden tension between them. Catherine openly did not accept the man, feeling uncomfortable with his presence. She deliberately avoided communicating with him, trying to immediately leave the room during his visits. Characteristically, she concealed her true feelings from her friend to avoid creating a conflict situation. Catherine's relatives told the police about her repeated complaints regarding Clive during telephone conversations. This information immediately attracted the investigators' attention, who began a thorough examination of the man's personality. Literally the next day after Catherine was reported missing, the police arrested Clive Sharp. However, due to a lack of direct evidence, including the absence of a body, they could not file official charges. Investigators obtained permission to search his vehicle and sent samples for genetic expertise. Checking Clive Sharp's dossier revealed shocking details of his criminal biography. His total prison sentence amounted to 14 years. Criminal activity began in adolescence. At 16, he sent letters and displayed aggression towards underage girls. At 17, Clive was sentenced to 3 years of imprisonment for raping a 15-year-old girl, whom he threatened by squeezing her throat with a glass. After release, the man supposedly reformed. He married, had a daughter, and for some time did not come to law enforcement's attention. Clive's family life was dramatic. His wife Gillian suffered from drug addiction and soon died. In 1994, when he was 26, he again found himself behind bars, this time for an attack on his friend's wife. The punishment term was 3 years. Soon after release, Clive committed another serious crime. He attacked a woman, tied her up, raped her while f***ing with a knife. This time the prison sentence was 8 years, but after 5 years the man was released on parole. 2003 was marked by another marriage, which collapsed by 2011. At the time of Catherine's disappearance, Clive was in a tense relationship with her friend Jane. Investigators believed that the coincidence was too eloquent to be random. Based on the collected materials, suspect Clive Sharp was detained in custody. During a specific period, Clive became part of a special rehabilitation program in a penitentiary institution, aimed at helping the criminal overcome his dangerous psychological impulses. During group sessions, the man openly revealed the darkest corners of his distorted psyche. The scale of his psychopathological behavior was analyzed in detail. It was discovered that he derived perverted satisfaction from binding women, committing sexual violence, and continuously intimidating them. In his sadistic fantasies after committing a crime, he considered 2 possible scenarios, either indifferently releasing the victim or planning their final physical destruction. His most brutal fantasies involved strangling victims to the point of biological death or drowning them. It is important to emphasize that this program ceased functioning in 2017. Its cancellation was a consequence of compelling evidence of the complete ineffectiveness of methods influencing the psyche of rapist maniacs. Moreover, it was established that such gatherings essentially transformed into an informal criminal association. Group meetings became so absurd that participants openly discussed murder technologies, methods of concealing crimes, and brazenly exchanged criminal experiences. On the eve of his detention, Clive categorically denied any involvement in the incident. He claimed to have an unquestionable alibi regarding Catherine's disappearance, allegedly spending that weekend visiting relatives. Strangely, his daughter and son-in-law confirmed this version, assuring investigators that they saw the suspect and he looked entirely calm. However, this circumstance did not exclude the possibility that Clive had sufficient time to commit the crime. According to the reconstructed sequence of events, he could have first dealt with Catherine, hidden her body, and then proceeded to visit his relatives. Law enforcement meticulously studied all available materials, aiming to find logical inconsistencies in the suspect's story. Investigators quickly established that Clive Sharp was deliberately providing false information. By that moment, genetic expertise results of biological materials found on the missing woman's bed had arrived. The examination demonstrated a 100% match with the suspect's biological materials. This unequivocally proved that he had been in the missing woman's premises and had intimate contact with Catherine. At the same time, law enforcement had no doubts that the intimacy occurred without mutual consent, as the woman had previously avoided contacts with this man. Simultaneously, large-scale search operations continued, both for the missing woman and her potential remains. At that moment, almost no one expected a positive scenario or believed in Catherine's potential rescue after encountering such a dangerous criminal as Clive, who openly fantasized about murder. Fateful information was obtained 2 days later. A young couple, exploring the area near the abandoned Pinfullen Quarry, located 5 kilometers from Catherine's residence, discovered her completely burned vehicle. They immediately informed law enforcement. The call came on October 18. Despite serious vehicle damage, leaving only a metal frame, forensic experts quickly identified it as the missing woman's property. By this point, information about the potential murder of the local veterinarian had spread throughout the county. However, no human remains were found inside the car, nor any additional physical evidence. Under these circumstances, final hopes for Catherine's rescue effectively disappeared. Clive Sharp continued to insist on his innocence. On October 19, the prosecutor's office, after analyzing the available evidence, decided to file official murder charges against Catherine Hallwink. Despite the absence of a body, preparations began for the future court proceedings, which, according to predictions, would be lengthy and controversial. The prosecution was aware of the case's complexity and maximally focused on gathering convincing evidence of the defendant's guilt. Search operations continued. Groups carefully examined territories adjacent to Catherine's house and the locations where the burned car was found. Law enforcement, volunteers, aerial support, and specially trained service dogs were involved in the search. Divers simultaneously examined all surrounding water bodies, hoping to find even the slightest clue. The investigation faced significant challenges. Without a body, proving murder beyond reasonable doubt would require exceptional evidence. Forensic experts conducted multiple examinations of the burned vehicle, hoping to find trace evidence that could confirm Catherine's presence or fate. Local media began extensively covering the case, which quickly became a sensation. The mysterious disappearance of a respected veterinarian, combined with the suspect's disturbing criminal history, captured public attention. People from surrounding areas joined voluntary search groups, providing additional resources to law enforcement. Jane, Catherine's friend, became a key witness. Her emotional testimony and detailed account of their last interactions provided crucial context for investigators. She remained determined to uncover the truth about her friend's disappearance, refusing to accept the growing possibility of her death. On October 7, 2013, Clive Sharp continued to deny his involvement in the murder. However, investigative measures quickly refuted his version of events. Divers discovered human remains near an abandoned quarry, directly beside the previously found burnt-out vehicle. Initially, 2 fragments of a human body were found, carelessly wrapped in plastic bags, the right hand and right leg. Soon after, approximately 3 kilometers from the original search location, a human torso was discovered in a body of water. All extracted biological remains were immediately sent to an expert laboratory for thorough examination. Forensic experts soon established an irrefutable fact: the discovered anatomical fragments belonged to the missing Catherine Gowing. This conclusion definitively ended any hopes for her rescue. Despite extensive search efforts in the water body, no additional body remains were found. One part of the body was solemnly sent to the deceased's homeland, Ireland, where her family resided. In her hometown of Cooney, County Offaly, a memorial ceremony was held. Over 300 people gathered to bid farewell to Catherine. So many wished to support her relatives and honor the memory of a bright woman who was loved by both people and animals. The criminal trial against the perpetrator began on February 14, 2013, and took an unexpected turn. On his lawyer's advice, Sharp unexpectedly pleaded guilty at the very beginning of the court hearings. This significantly simplified the judicial procedure and allowed the victim's family to avoid prolonged exhausting legal battles. However, this decision was dictated not by genuine remorse, but by purely pragmatic considerations. The prosecution had such a convincing array of evidence that the defendant essentially had no chance of acquittal. The evidence included absolutely everything, from fingerprints to unique splinters used to bind the victim, with identical splinters also found in the criminal's vehicle. Despite formally admitting guilt, the experienced criminal categorically refused to provide detailed explanations about the events in the house and the circumstances of Catherine's murder. Instead, the prosecution presented their own version of events, meticulously reconstructed based on the collected evidence. According to the prosecutor, the crime was planned and committed on October 12, 2012. Clive Sharp, thoroughly knowing Catherine's daily routine, deliberately waited for a moment when she would be alone. It is quite probable that the defendant had nurtured criminal intent towards the woman who consistently ignored his advances. The man had been observing her residence, waiting for a favorable opportunity. When the lights went out in the house, he stealthily entered and suddenly attacked Catherine in her bedroom. Most likely, he immediately tied her to the bed, having first gagged her mouth to prevent her from calling for help. The criminal repeatedly raped the defenseless woman and then strangled her. It is presumed that he spent the rest of the night in the house next to the victim's body, contemplating his further actions. The next morning, Clive went out to make necessary purchases. Surveillance cameras recorded him in the store where Catherine was last seen alive the day before. There, he bought garbage bags, cleaning supplies, a canister of gasoline, a screwdriver, and a Halloween mask. At a nearby construction store, the man also purchased a saw with several interchangeable blades. Returning to Catherine's residence, he began implementing his monstrous plan, first dismembering the body into separate parts, then carefully packing them into the purchased bags and moving them to his car. Then he started cleaning the crime scene. The murderer cleaned the premises so meticulously and professionally that forensic experts were unable to establish the exact location of the body dismemberment. Afterward, he transported the anatomical fragments and disposed of them by throwing them into a body of water. Later, he destroyed all of Catherine's personal belongings and her car, dousing the interior with gasoline and setting the vehicle on fire. During the investigative actions, additional telling facts were uncovered that definitively exposed the criminal nature of Clive Sharp. Literally the day after the murder, he executed a well-thought-out plan to cover his tracks, selling his old car and purchasing a new one. With this new vehicle, he soon began boasting to Jane during her attempts to clarify the circumstances of her friend's disappearance. Law enforcement managed to trace the fate of the sold vehicle and obtain a warrant for its detailed examination. The search results exceeded all expectations. Fragments of fabric identical to those used by the criminal to bind the victim were found on the vehicle, along with blood stains and Clive's fingerprints. Mobile phone geolocation data additionally confirmed the suspect's presence near the lake and the vehicle's location immediately after the crime. The collected evidence significantly strengthened the prosecution's position and expanded the evidence base for the trial. Clive Sharp categorically refused to comment on or confirm any details of the crimes attributed to him, maintaining a demonstrative silence. During the investigation, another shocking episode of the criminal's biography was established. It turned out that on that fatal evening, Catherine might not have been the only potential victim. Clive had intended to attack another woman towards whom he felt a pronounced sympathy. Around 10 p.m., he unexpectedly appeared near her residence during the same week when Catherine's murder was committed. The woman provided detailed testimony to law enforcement. She admitted that they had indeed previously been intimately involved, but due to the man's excessively rough behavior, she decided to no longer maintain the relationship. That evening, Clive broke into her premises, clearly intending to tie her up and cause harm. However, her determination and demand to immediately cease unlawful actions forced the criminal to retreat. He managed to tie the woman up but then unexpectedly abandoned her without untying her. The investigation presumed that immediately after the failed attack attempt, he headed to Catherine's house, intending to realize his perverted intentions. Around midnight, the suspect parked his car in a hotel parking lot opposite the friend's house, from where the residence of the future victim was clearly visible. Video surveillance cameras recorded his movements, a brief waiting period, a sharp exit from the car, and a purposeful movement towards Catherine's house, apparently when she was already asleep. Within an hour, Clive returned to his car, where he spent about an hour and a half, apparently contemplating what he had done. Around 3 in the morning, he visited Catherine's premises again. For him, this was the realization of what the other woman had not allowed. He knew perfectly well that the victim was alone, and the availability of a key to the premises, cordially provided by Jane, significantly facilitated his criminal intentions. Despite the formal admission of guilt, additional details could not be obtained from the defendant. Throughout the trial, he demonstratively sat with his head down, never once looking towards the prosecution representatives or the deceased's family. The court found Clive guilty of Catherine's murder. The prosecution initially demanded at least 42 years of imprisonment. However, taking into account mitigating circumstances, the defendant's confession, the term was reduced to 37 years of imprisonment. After the court hearing, Catherine's sister, Emma, shared her grief with the media. She emphasized that her sister's death was a devastating blow to everyone who knew her. Catherine had dedicated her life to serving and helping others. In her memory, a memorial was established in the Catholic Church, financed by the colleagues from the veterinary clinic where she had worked for a year and a half. The tragedy dealt a devastating psychological blow to her friend Jane, who felt guilty about everything that happened. She blamed herself for meeting Clive, allowing him into her life, and even giving him a key to her own residence. Previously, the man had seemed to her a decent and charming personality who never demonstrated aggression or cruelty. Of course, she could not have anticipated his turbulent criminal past. It turned out he had been hiding his true nature all this time, masking himself like a wolf in sheep's clothing. In deep despair, Jane quit her job at the veterinary clinic and moved to northern England to start life anew. The criminal remains behind bars to this day. Shortly after his latest imprisonment, his mother passed away. The news of her son's actions had a devastating psychological impact on her. Clive's daughter also disowned her father. When he finally is released, he will be 83 years old. I look forward to hearing your thoughts in the comments. Subscribe to the channel. Until next time, friends.